Hello and welcome to the program. The recent US decision to withdraw from the UN Human Rights Council is only the latest of many steps towards US isolation on the international scene. How will it influence international relations between world superpowers, and what does it mean for Ukraine? Joining us today in the studio to talk about the relations between the US and the rest of the world is Vitaliy Vlasyuk, an international law expert. Hello, thank you for joining us. So, about this withdrawal, Donald Trump has been accused of leading a double standards situation between situation in the States now with the migrants, and while withdrawing from this council, and in the meantime giving lessons of respecting international law outside. What's your view on it?
My vision is that his administration, Mr. Trump administration, differs in their attitudes and their approaches to how international law works, to how international law functions. He is not trying to find compromise. He is looking, first of all, for the interests of his country, of the United States of America. So if he has found out that this committee, United Nations Committee on Human Rights, is not effective, as was stated by Nikki Haley, the U.S. representative before the UN. So that means that really he does not need this committee, otherwise he would stay there. So first, U.S. interest, just like he was repeatedly saying during his electoral campaign. Second, international law, whatever.
But it's really impulsive. It looks like a really impulsive decision, a really rash decision. What does it mean for other agreements? Does it mean like that with some NATO? Can we imagine that, for example, if the Article 5 of the NATO alliance have to be applied, so namely the moment where the states have to stand up for a country which is in NATO, does that mean that Trump will not respect that?
I think he does respect agreements because he's a businessman. He's got his own reputation. If you entered into agreement, so you respect that agreement. But until that agreement serves your interests, if it doesn't, why should you stay there? I think that's how he thinks, the way how he thinks, because. Obama was every time trying to find some compromise. But if we remind his decision not to intervene into Syria even after chemical attack had happened, that's not a behavior of a true U.S. president, as I consider. So Mr. Trump stays where he is. And as I know, his decision to withdraw from this committee was not just of a minute. It was good, solidly considered decision.
Now, today's other big news is that President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are planning to meet around the time of Trump's trip to the UK. So it would be in mid-July. After the recent meeting with Kim Jong-un, we discovered that Trump easily attracted by, or fascinated to say the least, by strong leaders. Do you think there is a possible scenario where Putin could convince Trump to lift sanctions? And are there any ways to stop that?
I do not think that Mr. Trump is a person who could possibly be attracted by someone. He's looking for what he needs. If he really needed that North Korea would withdraw from its nuclear program, and he reached success in that, because he signed a memoranda with North Korea.
Nothing is done yet.
Yeah, but still, it's written, it's done. I mean, you cannot do it just in one day. But they agreed to do that in future. And I think that's an epic event during last years in course of world history. So let's see what he will discuss with Mr. Putin, and to what it will lead, let's see.
But concerning, especially concerning sanctions, there is this trend also in Europe between Austrian government, between Italian government, who tends to be okay to lift the sanctions. Are there any ways through international law, through maybe courts or things like that, to prevent the lifting sanctions on Russia?
Absolutely, there are some ways, but it must be understood that in international law works not like national law does, and international law is a compromise between states, between sovereign states, and every and one sovereign state has a right to do whatever it wants. So if states find some compromise, they'll do it. If they not, they don't. In this situation with sanctions, it is a result of compromise had been found. Let's see what happened next. Let's see.
But there's also a worrying sign with the fact that, in the worrying statement that recently Mr. Trump had, which is that Crimea is Russian because people speak Russian there. Does that mean that he would leave potentially Crimea to Russia and completely drop the topic on the table? Does that mean that the battle is lost in a way from the US side?
First, I need to say on that is that wasn't an official statement by the President of the United States. So that was kind of some internal sources. We cannot be sure that he, in fact, said that. Second, obviously, that wasn't smart if he did, because to connect population, to connect statehood, and with language, it's not smart.
But so Donald Trump's decision now seems to be characterized by some sort of back and forth movement. They have these outrageous statements, pushes, and then coming back. So according to you, do you see it as a strategy, or do you see it as a lack of consistency?
I think it is a strategy. I think United States is a country with strategy. There is a strong united team, a lot of councils, which could somehow impact on Mr. Trump's policy, and I think they do. And I think, but still, Mr. Trump as a president leads them in finding some approaches, right approaches to some problems. He is far more radical, far more decisive person if you compare him with Mr. Obama. He sees some problem, he just resolve it in that way or in another way.
In a chaotic way, often.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this overview. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio today.
Thank you.
That was Vitaliy Vlasyuk, international law expert. Thank you for watching the program. Stay tuned for the rest.